Hello, folks. This live is philosophical. We are covering the topics mentioned on the background. Is reality real or not? How do you know that? And why does this matter at all? Why are these questions important at all, So, if you know people who might be interested, you can invite them, okay? Yeah, I have Whitney. I'll invite Whitney. Let's try Tam. And Tiffany. And the rest are not English names. I'm not sure if those people speak English, to be honest. So what do you think, guys? Is reality real or not? And you are welcome to join the live, okay? So that we have an interesting conversation around this topic. Okay, I'll just invite a few people on my own. Like this. So I'll just start answering the question myself. The questions. Oh, someone is joining. Okay.
Yeah.
Hi
You
there,
invited me.
Lee.
I'm not sure I even know you, and how'd that come about? But hello.
Hey, what was that? I didn't hear your first sentence.
Oh, I said you invited me to join, and not sure I even know you, but well, hello.
Hi there. I think we participated in a live together and we followed each other probably. I think that's
Maybe,
how
could
I.
have been.
Yeah, Evan Briggs on TikTok. I think we were guests on his live
Oh,
together.
see, is reality? What are you talking about here? Is reality?
Yeah,
I can't
is
see a thing.
reality real or you cannot see it? How about
Well,
now?
yeah, but there's a little thing for it. Do you know what does this matter? Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
so is reality real or not? How
Thanks
do
for
you
the
know?
invite.
Yeah, hi Noble. Thanks for accepting it. So yeah, a philosophical life and philosophical questions. Is reality real or not? How do you know that? And why does this even matter? So would you
Ye-
guys like to?
Comment? Well, first I'll hear your comment. How's that? But it is
Okay.
an interesting question.
Yeah, it is a very important question, I'd say. So I consider myself an objectivist. That's a rational philosophy created by Ayn Rand. Maybe you've heard of Atlas Shrugged
Mm-hmm.
or The Fountainhead. And in her philosophy, we admit that reality is real, or we say that there is an objective reality which stands independent of the observer. Like if I close my eyes or if I die, the mountains, the trees, etc., everything will remain here. It's not that I open my eyes and I create my reality. That opposite point of view is very kind of prevalent, like the Matrix, or in quantum physics, we have some experiments which are interpreted to mean that we create our reality, So I'd say reality is real, and I can check that by just shutting myself. Like I can close my eyes, or I fall asleep and then wake up, and reality is always there. So that's why. Oh, thanks for the hearts, whoever is liking. Thank you, guys.
Now,
So
see,
this is how.
my
Well,
interpretation is going to make it very simple and very easy to understand, as well as it's not very complicated and it's short and sweet. It is unrealistic to not feel.
it is not realistic to not
It's
feel.
unrealistic to not feel.
It's
To feel pain,
unrealistic.
to feel emotions, it's unrealistic to not feel any of those things. It's
Mhm.
realistic to feel. It's unrealistic to not feel.
Yeah, but you don't really answer the question, is reality real or not?
That makes the question that reality is real because you can feel.
Hmm.
In
So
dreams, we
here,
don't feel in dreams.
well, in dreams, I feel fear, pleasure.
No
Sometimes I
pain,
think
no
even
gain.
pain.
Yeah, the everything is unreal in your mind. You know, you're feeling it, but it's barely there to feel. But in
Mhm.
reality, it comes at you for real
Mhm. How
because you
about
can
you?
really control your feelings in your dreams, like I can. Like, you know, Spectre comes up about to scare me. Whoa, whoa, whoa! This ain't real. Immediately understand. I do that in my dreams. You know, it's
Yeah,
like
that's lucid dreaming, right?
yeah, it's lucid dreaming. I do that a lot. And so, you know, and so you can control your feelings really well in your own dreams, but you're not really feeling them. In reality, we have less control over our feelings.
Hmm. How about you, Lee? How would you answer this question? Is reality real or not? And how do you know that?
Well, first of all, in complete honesty, I believe we only perceive part of reality. I
Yeah.
think there's other parts of reality that we do not perceive as human beings.
Mm-hmm.
I also believe that for us here, there's a baseline type of thing, which I'd call reality. Whether I accept it or not,
Mm-hmm.
the mountain is sitting there. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I can't. That's not a misperception. I do not believe we're in a matrix and this is all in our mind. You know, because there's too many people others sharing that. Although that is an interesting idea. Yeah, that's a whole different thing to ponder at some point. But I do believe there's a baseline reality, but I do believe there is reality beyond what we perceive.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can agree on that. We don't perceive ultraviolet light with our eyes, but we've developed some devices with which we can, yeah?
True. And if you get into, like, say from a religious perspective,
Mm-hmm.
they believe there's other things going on, you know, because of a particular religious belief that to them is part of reality, although it can't be proven. Do you understand what I mean? So perhaps what we perceive is not all of that which is.
I
It
need
can be.
to embrace reality and go study, you guys. I'll go ahead and chat later. Bye.
All right. See you later. Bye.
I hope I
Yeah.
didn't chase them off. I was just trying to ponder an idea to provoke more thoughts. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you bring in religion, actually, from the perspective of many religions, they argue that this reality is kind of fake or bleak. You know, heaven or the promised reality for Christians, Muslims, they think it's more real than this reality. You know, that's an interesting perspective.
well, yeah, I don't know about more real, but perhaps a different. Because I mean, it's like say from a Christian perspective,
Mhm.
and this is just to contemplate thoughts here. You know,
Yeah.
they believe that there's angels and demons, and there's a battle going on that we can't see. So they're believing in or heaven and a God, whatever you may perceive your father, your God to be.
Mhm.
So they believe in more than this reality, which could entirely be true. Who am I to say one way or another? You know, we are all limited by our own. And there's the whole question of how do you, each person perceives reality differently. You know, um, I could, it's like, I could say that my children and I got into this debate many times. That's red. No, that's a different, that's maroon or that's that. You know, they perceive reality as differently than I do.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of it is perception, but there is a baseline of that mountain is there. You know, that tree is there. I can't wake up tomorrow, go running and not hit the same tree that's been growing in my yard for the last couple of decades.
Yeah, that's, that baseline is very important. And I'd say this question matters because depending on the answer to this question actually dictates your ethics. Like if you're a believer, for example, and you believe that there is a different reality, and you believe that it's better than this one, you can be ready to sacrifice this reality for the sake of that other reality. And this is what a lot of religious people do. You know, even with Russia-Ukraine conflict, the dictator of Russia, Putin, is very famous for the following quote, and he said this more than once. In Russian, it sounds like this: "Они все сразу сдохнут, а мы попадем в рай." In English, it would be, "They will all just perish, but we will immediately go to heaven." He spoke of this in the context of nuclear war. A journalist asked him, what if nuclear war erupts and the planet gets destroyed, etc.? So, you know, religious people, when they kill themselves, when they destroy our planet for their political or religious beliefs, they have this common theme, a lot of them, that this reality is less important, less valuable, and it's worth sacrificing this one for the sake of a better one, you know?
Yes, I agree with that concept. I mean, not necessarily I agree with it, but I agree that you're exactly right. When you get into religion, you get into, like you said, there's a heaven or a better world. Then quite often you sacrifice your life on this planet, on this reality, in seeking the next reality, rather than
Right.
doing well. And that's a big religious question right there. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a big religious question, and it's one of the things, you know, that I'd argue in most forms of fascism, people have to believe that reality is what they make of it. And I think they firmly believe that they can change reality, they can shape reality. There's nothing objective, you know? Laws don't matter. Like, I make the rules as the king or the dictator or the president, yeah? And this is why, those questions are important, because your belief of a different reality can make you a better or a worse person in some ways, you know? And
And your belief in reality can affect those around you, depending upon the
exactly.
decisions that you make, and actually affect their reality.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to say also, you could be also manipulated, you know, your beliefs, your answers to these questions may make you more prone to manipulation, lies, including political lies, you know. That's why those questions are important. Now we could maybe concentrate on the second question. So when you say, okay, reality is real, the mountain is there, the tree is there, how do you know that, Lee?
Only by personal perception. I mean, that's really all I can go on. What else can you use as evidence except for your personal perception, which, as you say,
Mhm.
can be altered or perceived differently? So that's why I said there's a baseline. You
Mhm.
know, I don't know. You're much more learned than I am, so
It's
I
okay, it's
bow to your
okay.
intellect. So, um,
That's fine. Yeah, go ahead and make your thoughts around the question, and while you're at it, maybe I could comment on it. So, how do you know? Actually, you know, when we say it's just my sense organs, you know, it makes me think of people who experience hallucinations,
mm,
and their hallucinations are very real for themselves. I had an uncle who had a drinking problem, and as a kid, I remember that he had those visions, little green men. They made him angry. He fought those little green men. And my mom once even had to participate in it because I think uh, she also was kind of frightened and she wasn't sure what to do. He came at us very aggressively, like, hey, there are those little green men on the piano at my house. They're taking things away, etc. So my mom ran and she was like chasing those little men, you know. As a kid, I was both amused, it was funny, but it was also scary, you know.
Yes.
So,
Well,
um,
I think to do the baseline, you have to take it from a societal perception almost in a way, rather than an individual perception. You know, if
mhm,
everybody sees the same mountain,
yeah.
then you have to, okay, by group perception, we know that that mountain is real. If you're the only one that sees the mountain and 20 other people say there's no mountain there, there's a
Mhm,
problem. Now, I will tell you a very personal story. Okay.
mhm,
I'm a
yeah.
little bit of an older man.
Mhm.
Um, and my father was what's known as a cataleptic epileptic. So when
Okay.
he'd go into an epileptic seizure, he would go into a comatose state.
Uh-huh.
Now, I remember this as a young man, and this is way before technology. This is in the 70s. Technology didn't exist as it does today. Okay. The phones were still
Mhm,
hanging on the wall, and
mhm,
that was that. There was no cell phones. My father could tell you everything that would go on in that house. And I remember one specific incident when I was 9 years old.
yeah.
Right across the street was a young lady named Shirley Lunau. Her son, she had two sons, an older one and a younger one. They're both called Brian. And one was Big B and one was Little B. And Little B, you know, he was, I don't know what words is politically correct, but he had a learning disability. I'll put it kindly
Uh-huh.
like that.
Mhm,
Anyway, my father had went into one of these seizures. And when he
mhm,
woke up from the seizure, he immediately got up and walked over to Shirley's house, and I've tagged along behind him. And he walked into the door
mhm.
and he said, "Shirley, your son, Big B, has just been in a motorcycle accident. He's okay. Don't worry."
Wow.
As the words came out of the mouth, the phone rang on the wall. She picked it up and, "Mrs. Lunau, this is Shasta General Hospital. Your son Brian has just been in a motorcycle accident. His condition is yet unknown. We suggest you come down to Shasta Lake City Hospital immediately."
Wow.
That at the time could that there's no physical way within the law of physics that I know of this world that that
Mhm,
could have happened.
mm.
So it leads me to believe that there are things beyond our perception.
Mhm, mhm.
I can't label them or I can't say for sure what it may be, but
Yeah.
things like that have happened where the norm of what we see, touch, smell, and feel
Mhm.
is not all that there is. Just
That's
something to ponder.
yeah, that's a very interesting story. Although I consider myself a realist and I value scientific thinking, but I don't like dogmatic thinking, and I always
Right,
say, you know, anything can be. In science, also, it's completely all right to question things, you know.
right.
So yeah, I'm fine with questioning those things. There is this interesting. I don't know if. Well, I could call him a researcher, maybe a scientist, but I'm not sure. But Rupert Sheldrake, have you heard of him?
No, but enlighten me.
Yeah, he's a British researcher, if I'm not mistaken, and he is researching those phenomena that we call telepathy or distance feeling or stuff like that.
Hmm.
And I remember, I used to listen to his lectures and stuff. So it's interesting. If you are interested in those topics, you might, find some of his videos and experiments interesting.
Yeah.
He had a lot of uh, e- uh, he conducted various experiments, and of course he's kind of laughed at by some
Hmm.
who say, "Oh, nothing of this exists," etc. But he has the right to conduct his research and try to scientifically prove those things. He even conducted some experiments with animals when, our animals can sense that we're coming home. Yeah, cats, dogs, especially dogs, and sometimes the owner, what he actually studied was that sometimes owners would just leave the workplace, and the workplace was miles away. So physically, the house animal wouldn't be able to know it. Yeah,
Right.
but the moment the person left work, the animal would go, and sit by the door and wait for the owner. That's, those are interesting phenomena. They exist. They are part of our lives. Why deny them? Why marginalize those things?
Yeah, it's interesting to ponder. I often wonder, and this is just like I said, because I often like to psychoanalyze the reality and such topics. But
Mhm.
is it possible that we limit ourselves, that we can actually perceive or know more of our reality that is still within the bounds of physics and reality, but we limit our own perceptions
Mhm.
to the world that is comfortable for us to accept?
Mhm.
Does that make sense? I
Yes.
mean, I'm not saying it's true or not, but just you understand the hypothesis of thought.
Yeah. Yeah. Gag, thank you for the likes. Thank you very much for the hearts. Guys, you can tap the screen as
Yeah,
well.
let's get you up on the hearts. I'll tap a few to get you running.
Yes, thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I think also reality works like that. Any living creature has boundaries. Whatever exists in our universe has clear boundaries, like a smartphone, a cup, our eyes, our brains, and different forms of life have different boundaries. Uh, on top of that, we can limit ourselves culturally and in other ways. But also there are some limits by default. Our hardware, yeah, the physical bodies have to be limited, and they have to act limited, because see, our eyes cannot see miles and miles away. Yeah, there are certain limits.
Yeah.
This is how reality works.
Yeah, even if I believe it, I still can't slam dunk a basketball court. It don't matter how much I wish I could. That's just the
Yeah,
reality of my physical capability.
yeah, yeah.
You learn that more and more as you get older.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this second question is also very important. How do you know? Some people, when they judge on reality, they are like, well, my holy book says so. This is why I know that, reality is like this, reality was created like that, etc. Yeah. But this is,
Okay, but it's so easy for people to say this is how I know when you known is really not known. It's a belief. Now you may
yeah.
have had instances that tend to reinforce that, but it's still a
Mm-hmm.
belief. That's why it's called faith.
Yeah.
You can't say I know because you don't. You take it on faith.
Yep. Yep. I totally agree on that. Actually, I'll try to draw something on my screen. Where is that drawing tool? Can I have it? No, that's different. Okay, so what I want to enhance sound, background, words, music, effects, maybe in effects. No, effects is something else. Yeah, so we basically have two ways of thinking. So one, I'd call it dogmatic thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the tap so much, Lee. I
I'm just trying to
appreciate
get it up because the more, like I said, you are very intellectual, intelligent, and we need more of that rather than just
it.
the screaming at each other about political rhetoric going in circles. That people
Yeah,
need to
yeah,
think more.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Totally agree. So dogmatic thinking. Oh yeah, I think I found that drawing tool. Play draw. But I need to disable effects. Okay, I won't do it. So dogma, it's a Greek word. I think the original meaning is example, but in modern English, dogma means something which is taken as truth and it cannot be questioned. So from dogma, you get faith or belief, and you can have religious dogmas like Jesus is 100% God. That's a religious dogma, yeah? Or the Pope of Rome, according to Catholicism, the Pope of Rome can never be wrong. That's also a religious dogma. Like you have to believe that. So also you can have political dogmas, yes? If you're a socialist or a communist, a Marxist, your dogma can be that capitalism is wrong, it's terrible, or everything is created by the working class. Yeah, those are also dogmas. If you don't try to think around them, like why it is so, are you sure it is like that? How can you prove? If you have none of this, you're just like it is so, then it's a dogma. So opposed to that, apart from dogmatic thinking, which gives birth to belief and faith and religion, we also have what I call axiomatic thinking. So axioms are also ideas which are held to be self-evident. So here's an example of an axiom. The whole is always bigger than its part. It's just an idea that we people believe is true. But axioms are questionable, and it's completely all right to question axioms and try to disprove them. So from axiomatic thinking, if you take axioms like, okay, it seems to be self-evident, but it's completely okay to question those things, then from axiomatic thinking, you can get to scientific thinking, yeah, a more flexible model of thinking, where you don't feel the need to be aggressive about your beliefs, you don't feel the need to attack the other side.
Or you don't feel attacked and therefore need to defend yourself in
Yes,
your
yes,
dogma.
yes, yes. See, here's an example. I love Ayn Rand, her books, her writings, but if someone comes and says, well, Ayn Rand was shit, she was bad, she was illiterate, etc., I won't feel offended, and I won't attack the other person.
Yeah, yeah.
But, with all those political debates, you have people, when you criticize Trump, for instance, some of them,
Or yeah, or even vice versa. Yeah, depending on what side
yeah,
you're
or vice
standing on.
versa. Of course, both sides have this, yes? The Democrats, the Republicans, the conservatives, the radical left, they have this thing, and it shows how vulnerable they are, how superficial they are actually in their judgment, when you get emotional, you basically show that you have nothing under the surface.
Well, not only that, when you get too emotional, like what they do, like you're saying, it makes you more susceptible to manipulation.
Also,
You know?
but if you know a lot, if you are sure in your point of view, yeah, you don't feel the need to attack the other side. You don't feel the need to just shout and yell. Of course, you can get angry at injustice, yeah, that's completely understandable. However, in general, yeah, when you're debating, you don't feel the need to get angry and yell when you think a lot, and when you know where your beliefs and ideas and convictions come from. That's what I'm saying.
Well, the strong sometimes. Well, that depends upon the human being, because it depends on how mature the human being is.
Mhm.
Because if the human being is mature, then irregardless as to what you believe, you can still talk about and debate strong subjects without having emotion of violence. The emotion of violence is a weakness of the human being that shows through. It's like violence is very much a weakness. So you're just showing your own insecurities that you're trying to hide by trying to yell over or using anger as a source to control or dominate the situation rather than just simply being secure in your knowledge and allowing someone else to be to think whatever they choose, because you know what you believe to be right and wrong, and you don't have to force somebody else to believe. The problem is so many people don't they don't want to know what is right and wrong. They just want to win.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're not even interested in hearing your point of view. They're just interested in sharing theirs
Yeah.
and expect you to either agree or to show that you are in their thinking. You are immature, you don't know enough because you disagree with them, you know?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that exists also not only on the far right, but also on the far left. Like some radical feminists, LGBTQ people, they are also very aggressive about it. They get very angry, and they even say that rage and anger are very acceptable political tools, tools for activism.
And
And
it even goes beyond politics. I mean, you're talking about dogma itself. Any
yeah.
level of dogma, you're going to run into that particular scenario, with
Mhm.
certain minds. And like I said, it all depends upon the human being.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not even the dogma; it's just the human being.
Yeah.
Because regardless of what dogma you may perceive, whether it's religious or political or whatnot,
Mhm.
if you're secure with yourself and what you believe,
Mhm.
then and you're a more mature minded human being, then
Mhm.
you can learn to debate or discuss even strong topics without the use of anger.
Exactly.
It's kind of like a bully. A
Yeah.
bully is just somebody that's trying to hold it to hide their own insecurities and using violence to reinforce it. That's all it is, and that spectrum goes across any dogma you have. You're going to have people that are small minded like that, and then you're going to have people that, you know, I may believe in, say, Jesus Christ, and you may not. Some people are going to get very angry and say, no, you have to believe. And some people are going to be able to sit down rationally and discuss it and say, well, this is, and go, you know what? I agree to disagree. And it's been interesting to talk to you. Have a nice day. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Recently I'm an atheist, and I am very kind of firm in my atheism. But recently I joined an archbishop on TikTok,
Uh,
and we had a very, very interesting conversation around
mhm.
reality, the dualism of the world, emotions, yeah, etc. So it was a very interesting and an enriching exchange. And I also had debates with religious people where they were like, "Oh, you are deluded. You will be punished for your sins, etc., etc."
Yeah,
So, as you say, it depends on the person, on the level of maturity of the given individual.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think we could move on with discussing maybe the last question a little bit, like why does this matter? Like the answer to these questions, yeah, is reality real or not? And then how do you know and why all of this matters? Would you like to comment on that, or you'd like to
Let me
see?
ponder a second here.
Yeah,
Why?
sure.
Why does? Because actually, I was thinking about earlier, but I lost my train of thought because we got into
Hmm.
different topics
Hmm.
or different aspects of the topic, one might say.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
I
take your time.
think I think I think having a understanding of baseline reality is kind of important, but at the same time,
Hmm.
not getting straddled into, like I said, individual realities. Because I think about the physical realities of this world, which
Hmm.
are, I perceive to be kind of, like I said, if 100 people sees that tree there, there's a tree there.
Hmm.
That's kind of important that you know that, so you don't go running and just smash into the tree.
Hmm.
This is something that's a given. But there are realities that we are, or not even realities, there are things that we are taught to be reality that can be limiting to ourselves. You know what I mean? Such as quite often a person born into poverty will be taught that this is going to be your reality. That's your reality. You're born to be poor.
Hmm.
And pardon me, I don't mean this to be offensive, but you're the lower class, and that's where you're always going to be.
Hmm.
Whereas understanding that that's not really a reality
Hmm.
and freeing yourself up to strive for something better is an important thing. So there's kind of a differential between the linguistics and perception.
Yeah, actually, that first point about when if more people perceive something, then it is real. I agree on that principle, and this is why I made the point on hallucinations and
Yeah,
mirage, yeah, etc. However, I'd like to also, share with you this interesting phenomenon. Historically, there were some instances where mass hallucinations were reported, or as what we call them, mass hallucinations today.
yeah, yeah.
For instance, an entire village would say, in the clouds we saw Virgin Mary,
Yeah.
and it was a miracle. So we cannot, take a scientific test on that because it happened centuries ago, etc. But I agree with you that one point is a lot of people can see that, and another point I would say we can go further than that and make it about different species. Like if a dog, for instance, a bear or some other mammal or animal goes, and they go up the hill instead of just passing, through the hill. If trees grow on that hill or in the mountain, so again, this shows that other species experience that as well. So it makes that more credible. Okay, so this mountain is real. So
Right.
that was, one thing I wanted to comment
Well,
on.
when you start talking about, like, say, you're giving the example of mass hallucinations,
Yeah.
and usually such phenomenons can be justified or described, or there's usually a base reason for it, such as like what you're saying. Somebody can look up and say, "Hey, there's the face of Jesus in the clouds," or Mother Mary, or whatever it was, and the person next to him, being a religious person, can agree, and then you get everybody to agree, and that's just herd instinct. That's you ever heard of herd instinct, where you'll get. Yeah, you'll be stopped at a stoplight, and then one person will just walk across the street, and then everybody go, okay, and start following him
Yeah.
instead of following the light. That's herd instinct, and so quite often such things are explainable within the boundaries of physics of this world. Okay, there's a gas leak that people didn't realize they're being affected from, and they're all being subject to, and this is creating a particular type of situation. It's so that's quite often explainable if one gets down to the science of things, but that doesn't change the reality of the physics of the world itself.
Yeah.
As you said.
Also, people can have religious or political motivations, yes, for agreeing.
And there's times that people can use things like that for manipulation, and if you get too many people manipulating the same thing, then they're all under the, you can call that, I don't know about hallucination, but mass manipulation, where we're all going to agree with that fact to be real, when that fact was never real in the first place. So that doesn't necessarily make it a reality. Exactly. It just makes it a consensus.
Yep. Totally agree on that. And getting back to this last question, why does this matter? I think this matters for even the mental well-being of the person. Of course, you can be religious, you can believe in heaven and hell, and be adequate and function properly in this reality. But even as a kid, I remember I was maybe around between 8 to 12 years old, and my both grandmas were very religious. And one day, one of them showed me a postcard, and she was like, "See, bad boys go to this place," and it was hell, with all the depictions, flames and devils and stuff, and it was terrifying for me. I was kind of terrorized by
traumatized there a little bit.
Yeah, that's the word. Yes, traumatized. Yeah, I got traumatized, and I would have, I remember at least one or two religious dreams, I had, because I was kind of indoctrinated, right? So what I'm saying, these questions and the answer to these questions is important even for our mental well-being and for our ethics. Like, okay, what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's evil, what's acceptable to do and what's not. For religious people, like Inquisition or the Crusades, those things are acceptable, killing the infidels,
Yeah.
because they say, okay, reality is created by a super powerful being, so answers to these two questions actually matter so much in our lives. We just don't think from this point of view, and we don't realize, but when you study those things, listen to stuff, you realize, oh yes, it makes sense now. And of course, you can be atheist, materialist, and still be bad. Okay, I'll also give you that. Like we had people like Stalin or Mao, socialists and stuff who were materialists, who were atheists, but they were dictators. So I don't want to say that, it's just complete white.
Well, the question is as to like why does it matter? I think
Mhm.
for me, the first thing that pops in my head is because if you don't have an understanding of the base reality, then you're more likely and susceptible to manipulation.
Exactly.
And one person's manipulation can alter someone else's life, and that can quite often domino and alter many people's lives. And then in a way, you change reality by your misperception of reality. Because all of a sudden, like bad things happen or good things happen. It can go either way. Unfortunately, I think it goes more towards one side than the other. But if you don't have a personal grounding of, well, this is reality, and one of the examples I've come across is like I've dealt with a narcissist. Now, a narcissist will perceive this world completely different from you, and their reality is different. Now, sitting back from a perspective point of view, you can see the flaws in their thinking. But while they're there and the people that are around them, they don't see the reality. They just see that person's perspective of the reality, and therefore get caught up into it and be weak or do things that might not be appropriate, even thinking they're doing a good thing. You know what I mean? Because a narcissist will present a case that is really the complete opposite of what is reality in defense of their own perceptions. And if you don't stand back and take an objective view of what reality is and just allow yourself to become susceptible to that person's perception of it, you can get caught up into that false sense of reality, and that happens quite often. Anyway, just one example of why it does matter.
Yep. Exactly.
So yeah,
on a personal level, on a group level, like even if we take family or couple, as a little group of two people or a few people. Also, if we just go bigger, like in terms of politics, in terms of communities, the answer to these questions and your perception matters, because also your churches, your political and religious and leaders.
You can give now this, I don't know what I'm allowed to say on TikTok or not, but look at Hitler. Because of his misperception of reality, look at the catastrophe that followed.
That's interesting. I was thinking around these words also. Seemed like a lot of people, instead of using his name, they say the mustache man or the
mustache man. I don't even know. Okay.
The mustache.
Oh, the mustache man. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
See, I would not catch that. I'm sorry. My faux pas, if it's offensive to you, I'm sorry.
No, it's not. It's not at all. I just think that TikTok might be kind of censoring or doing something to your profile. I have no problem, with
No,
to.
no, I don't care, man. I'm
Oh,
somebody that I'm very much I I I know who I am. I'm proud of who I am, and,
mhm,
and
mhm.
I'm not spewing hate. It's kind of like before. You mentioned Stalin or Miles or
Yeah,
what's the
yeah,
difference between him and them?
mhm,
You know,
yeah.
they're all
Yes,
notoriously
it's the same
evil
shit.
human beings in the history of humans, and I'm not
Yeah,
comparing you to him or anything like that. Therefore, degrading the individual. So I
yeah,
don't think that there's should be a problem. Although TikTok is quite weird on just keywords, you know what I mean? And maybe that's just
exactly.
a hot word that you're not
That's why
allowed to
they did
say.
that.
Like you
Yeah,
have to say unalive now, which I never understood.
yeah,
Why I can't use the D word, you know? Okay,
yeah.
but
I don't get some
whatever,
of that too.
you know.
Or about the GUN violence people
Yeah,
use.
yeah. Or pow pows, where we say, "Hey, I got my pow pow." You know
Uh,
what I mean? What's the difference? You may be changing the linguistics, but the ideology is the same.
yeah,
So what? You know, it's to me that's a bureaucratical stupidity.
yeah. It's a
But
form of
whatever.
censorship. I think they are trying to censor some stuff, but I don't get why. Also, because we still discuss that. We just use different terms or funnier
Yeah,
terms.
yeah,
It's like linguistic engineering or something like
right.
that.
Yeah, it's manipulation, and well,
Yeah.
it's funny because my first wife's name is spelled Lolita. I can't even. I'm not even going to say that
Mhm.
because that at one time was a notoriously. Um, it was viewed as a sexual bad thing. You know, you ever hear the story of that name and
Yeah.
what it's referred
Yeah.
to. So every time I would talk to my wife, Facebook would like flag me, and I'm like, no, 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 that's my wife's name. You know,
Wow.
what are you doing? You're killing me. Oh no, you can't talk to her now because she's in the Philippines and I was here, and I couldn't talk to her for a week because they
Wow.
closed my account. So I had to come up with the nickname and all this stuff because I couldn't call her by name, and it's just political.
Insane. That's insane. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
why
you
I
know,
don't like neither the far right nor the far left. They both have their crazy things.
yeah. They
Insane.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anytime, anytime you get so dogmatic about a particular belief that you cannot allow someone free speech. See, this
Mm.
is what people don't understand. Free speech is necessary, especially if you're speaking bad, because there's society that around you that
Mhm.
tells you that that speech is unacceptable. You know, and
Yeah.
we're human beings, we're like that. Like you go into a room and if you start talking, no one's listening, you shut up, you know.
Mm.
Or if you go into an area and you start talking about the mustache man and everybody looks down at you, then you know that that's not good. You know,
Mhm.
it's the feedback of society that helps form our natural boundaries, which
Yeah.
everybody kind of needs in a way, is those boundaries
Yeah.
of right and wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm a big free speech type of guy, so don't mind me.
Yeah, as an objectivist, I, find the free speech. Oh, Michael says, well, hello. Hi there, Michael. Yeah, the freedom of speech, it's a very important concept to me as well. However, I differentiate between free speech and hate speech.
Well,
And
that's yeah. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
yeah, I think, the first one is important. Like, you can tell me, I disagree with you, or I find your point of view wrong or deluded, etc. Yeah, that's completely
Mhm.
fine. You could even make some jokes about me or someone else. I wouldn't mind that. But threats like I'm gonna do this to you, yeah, or all the X, like a specific group of people, need to be dealt with. Yeah, they need to be mm, made undead, as we would say
Yeah.
in today's TikTok terms. Yeah, that's for me. That's hate speech, and hate speech is, it has consequences. Sometimes people get very afraid. Their level of anxiety increases. There are cases when people commit suicide because of hate speech and incitement. We saw the current president of the US, yes, what he did in his around 4 years ago, yeah, when he thought that his election results were taken away from him, when people went to the famous building, they attacked the building, etc., etc. So speech, has power and consequences. So I'd argue freedom of speech and hate speech are two different things.
Understandable.
Just
Understandable.
yeah,
But you also, that runs into a catch-22 though as well,
what's that?
because sometimes when you hide the when you hide the evil is allowed to manifest into something greater. And quite often when you allow the evil to speak its terms, then people will look at it and go, okay, I recognize that as evil, and it's a catch-22. Even like what you say now I don't want to get in political, but like the instance you gave where the man gave a speech and everybody went to a certain house.
Yeah.
Now, see, can I say now that you're being manipulated? Because as from one person's perspective, and they say this quite well, the more the videos came out of that particular day, the attack that was proposed was not such the attack. So we were spoken to the media of to think this, but then a lot of people are showing these videos that, hey, and I'm not trying to go one side or the other, I'm just looking at both sides of the aisle, that what they told you to think at the time was maybe not necessarily true, because here's the video that says contradictory to what they tried you to think. Do you know what I mean? So do you understand what I'm saying? So by allowing both sides to speak is the only way we're going to get to the truth.
Well, I agree with the point that both
Okay.
need to be able to speak, but it's also about the terms they're using, It's not only about what you want to do, but how you want to do it. If you do it in a respectful manner, or at least in acceptable terms, without harassment, without threats, etc., that's always better, And sometimes when you allow the evil to speak up, to present itself, that also allows the evil to get more power, to get more followers, to consolidate.
True. And it also goes the other way though as well, because I see political people that speak up in their hate speech, and like I said, I go, now this is me being secure in who I am, go, wait a minute, that's hate speech. That person, I would stand against, because I do not believe in hate speech. And if I'd never heard that, person allowed to speak that hate speech, I would only have to go on hearsay of what other people said. So like I said, you are correct, and in a way I am correct, and I think it becomes a catch-22. So, where do we draw the line? That's going to be a never-ending philosophical debate.
Yeah, so I love these topics, and also the drawing the line thing. Maybe I think we could talk about this during one of the future lives. Actually, I love the philosophy of objectivism, also because of this. Because in this philosophy, there is an interesting sentence or a core belief. Ayn Rand, the founder of the philosophy, she says, the only absolute is reason. What she means is you cannot just take ready-made formulas and try to use it on every instance for every context.
Right.
Here's a more specific example. Like, we could agree that life is a very important value, that taking lives is generally bad. But if you say, killing is wrong, like as an absolute value, then how about like Ukrainians defending their lands against the Russian invaders?
Yeah. How about like when you go into war?
Yeah.
Or a home invader in my house.
Exactly.
If I'm a father, I have a responsibility to protect my children. I'm not going to let one of them be harmed or perhaps unalive because of this person. And if necessary, is not unaliving him. And so they're absolutely, you're right. Absolutes are quite often
So
never
that's why,
really
yeah,
within.
that's why I love this
Yeah.
idea that reason is the only absolute, meaning you have to think and you have to consider the context of the given situation. You cannot just take some dogmas or, mantras and try to implement it everywhere on all cases. And even around the laws, yes, what laws do we make? Or where do we draw the line? Okay, free speech, hate speech. Yeah, sometimes it's hard. And sometimes you have to consider the context, like why this person said, the given thing. What was his motivation? And the judges do that a lot. Yes, they'd
Yeah.
say, okay, given that the person wasn't trying to harm anyone, this is not a crime. Yeah, for
Right.
instance. So it's actually a lot of it is solvable. This is what I want to say. It's just we need to give proper thought around the topic and understand that reason is the only absolute, meaning it's okay. It can be, a law can be made and a
Right.
judge can be given the opportunity to do their job and come up with a verdict. If we disagree, okay, where do we draw the line? This is why we have the court system
Uh,
and stuff.
a lot of what I'm speaking of is I was watching a gentleman. You probably know the name. You have Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's a lot of his discussions on it. Free
Mm.
speech. He's very much a free speech absolutist type of guy.
Oh yeah, I think at Oxford and places like that at universities he debates, if I'm
Yeah,
right.
oh yeah. Oh, Jordan Peterson is considered the world's leading psychologist, or there's a more clinical term for it. And yeah, he is actually quite huge right now. He
Yeah, I
started
think
up in
I saw
Alberta,
some
Canada, or
recent
something like that,
examples.
and
Yeah,
got
yeah.
into the whole. I guess Canada passed a law, and this is getting back to speech,
Uh-huh.
saying that they made it a law that you had to use whatever pronouns a human being chose
Oh
to
yeah.
identify
Yeah.
themselves at, and he got upset,
Yeah.
saying, there's things that we can't say, but
Uh-huh.
you can't make a law what I have to say.
Yeah.
In other words, you can't scream fire in a movie theater, but you can't tell me I have to, And he went into, hey, there's a lot of delusional things, and you can't tell me I have to believe in your delusion. And he become really, I mean, infamous for it. And he does. He's a worldwide speaker, and he also helps out, Fortune 500 professionals in, this is how you're thinking, and this is how you can
Yeah.
adjust your thinking to be more
Yeah.
successful. And he's pretty well now renowned.
Yeah, I think I saw some excerpts from his debates. I think he was at Oxford debating some
Yeah,
students and
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah. I think if you watch it, you probably find a lot of intriguing points that he brings up.
Yeah, yeah. See, this is why I don't also like the political left, because they have their exaggerations as well. And arresting someone for misgendering, I don't know, it seems kind of extreme.
Well, it to me it goes against the basic. Like I said, it
That's
goes
not.
against the basic principles of freedom itself. You
Mm.
can't tell me you can believe anything you want, but you can't tell me I have to believe it too.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Yeah, or
Especially,
you'll get punished if you don't.
yeah, and there's always I've heard this statement. If you can convince the world that reality isn't true, and this gets back to why it does matter.
Yeah.
If you can convince the populace that reality isn't true, then you can convince them of anything.
Yeah.
So if you can convince somebody that you can, in your mind, change your gender overnight, then what can you not convince them of? And I'm sorry, and I apologize if this is your particular lifestyle. That's completely up to you. But the reality is, 100 years from now, when they dig up your bones, your DNA is going to be what they proclaim your gender on. Not your perception of yourself. If you choose to perceive yourself in one way or another, that's your business. It's your life. You have to choose how you live your life, but you can't tell me how I have to perceive the world.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As long as I'm not judging you for your judgments, you can't tell me what to perceive. That's just my personal philosophy.
Mhm. See, gender thing and reality, that's also interesting. I'm thinking around why it is so important for the conservatives, yeah, for a lot of the Republicans. Okay, we need to have only two genders. And I
Mm,
was thinking around, also reality
mm.
and perception of reality. I think what they are trying to do is to hang on to the perception of reality. Okay, reality is like this, and period. And you have to take it. I think it's just different perceptions of reality clashing with each other, and one group just tries to hang on to their perception of reality because it makes things easier. Yeah, when you know what things are called, what
Well,
exists in the world and doesn't, it's easier to cope with reality and life. Or else, because let me just finish my point of view
okay,
on
yeah,
this.
yeah. I don't mean to interrupt. My humblest
Yeah.
apologies. Go ahead.
So, because when we take freedom as a concept, like, how on earth a government should be allowed to dictate me, like, you should have either this or that gender? Where is the freedom of choice, the freedom of
Mm.
self-expression, etc.? Like, as an objectivist, I want my government to be small and efficient. I don't want it to interfere with my personal life. Yeah, and seems like Republicans agree on this, at least from the perspective of economics. Yeah, but
Mm.
then why would you have government, control genders of people, which is something very personal, individual, etc., etc.? I'm just, trying to understand this thing, this huge debate around transgender rights and why third gender is acceptable or not. Oh, Michael, thank you so much for the gift. Thanks a lot. So yeah, what do you think about this, Lee?
Well, and actually, I don't want to offend because I don't know your personal choices,
Mm-hmm.
but this gets back to baseline reality.
Mm-hmm.
Baseline reality is you have XY and XX chromosomes. You're either one or the other.
Well,
Now
you
you
can
can
have the
perceive.
third option, yes, in terms of chromosomes. Sorry to just
Okay,
jump
go.
inside.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Because like I
You can
said,
have
I bow to your intellect.
XXY chromosomes,
Well,
even on the level of chromosomes, you have some diversity. It's more than two, actually. Oh,
you think
options.
so? Because I now see that's something I have not heard of. That
Yeah,
is, I've always heard that you had the XY and I think it was XX. I could be misquoting that, but I never heard of a third
yeah, it
chromosome
exists, like
calculation.
XXY. It can be XXY, for instance. And I'll check this out myself later. I'll just go through Google,
Yeah,
but I think
and,
there
and
is.
there
Mhm.
may be in like a extreme cases, but not as the norm. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, you check that, and maybe it's something I could
Mhm.
look into as well.
Uh-huh.
This concept I've never heard because there are, the people that have been formed with both sexes. Maybe they are the XXY. Do you
Mhm.
understand what I mean? I don't know what I can say
Yeah,
without offending or without flagging
yeah.
TikTok here. But I know in Asia they're quite common, lady boys and they're proud of who they and what they are, and they should be, and that's not an issue. But
Mhm.
that's not the norm. That's you know,
Mm-hmm. So
th-
that's an interesting question. Norms. And yeah, I understand, like, okay, if a given community lived their lives in a certain way and they want to continue doing that, they can. But when it comes to, places like the US, yes, when it's a melting pot, it's, different cultures with their traditions and stuff. Even you even have native cultures who had three genders: men, women, and two spirits, or the two-spirited people. So these were what we could call transgender people, yeah, in modern terms.
I, okay. No, I'll listen to you because I've heard that debate before, and I also heard that disproven. or by some. And I don't know enough to say which one is true and which one is propaganda. So I'll merely close my mouth and listening, and you know what I
Okay.
mean?
Well, I studied this term. Actually, I wrote a little booklet on the topic. I was one of the things I do is training, and I have been training, on the issue, the topic of sexuality for many years. So it's not just in the US, in North America, but there are other cultures too. So the two spirits, I saw some historical images, like people who were two spirits, and photography was there, already. So I saw some evidence for that. But apart from that, like in India, for instance, they have three genders. They have men, women, and what they call as hijra. So the hijras are, we could call them feminine males, but they're not men. Yeah, they have their own gender. And across the globe, we have some cultures which say we have only two genders, men and women. And sometimes, there are cultures and societies that say, no, it's three genders. There is one society. Michael, I see your comment. I'll go through it in a second, okay? One culture, when I was, writing on the topic, they have five genders. It's unusual, very unique. It's just one culture. I think they are in Polynesia. So they have men, women, and two specific genders for what we call masculine women and feminine men. And they also have priests, and the priests, they have their own gender. It's called Bisu, B-I-S-U. So priests are not men, they're not women. They have their own gender. It's unique, it's unusual.
Okay, but how much is that? Okay, go. You want to talk to the gentleman about his question or about his comment?
Okay, Michael, what is he saying? Gentlemen, I think you should have this
These
conversation from
conversations
now
from
on.
now on. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm doing these lives more of. Yeah, Michael, and you're welcome to join. And if you'd like to come and talk to us, feel free to do so. You can, support me with more tabs, and thank you for that gift again. Those things help and motivate, and more people can join in. Yeah, thanks a lot for the support. Yeah, Lee, if
Well,
you'd like
but you're
to.
saying no. Wait a minute. Let me back up here a
Yeah,
second.
yeah,
Now
yeah.
you're saying that across the globe, there's different perception of gender,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like you said, the priests have their own gender. Now,
Mhm.
but is that not a perception of gender than an actual scientific gender? You know what I mean? It's how much is it? Okay, I'm a priest, so I'm not male or female. Well, actually, you are. You're a priest, so regardless of what you perceive yourself as, your chromosomes are this, and therefore, you're of this gender. You know,
Uh-huh.
how about this? How about despite how many genders, and that I won't negotiate because I'm not a scientist and I don't know the
Mhm.
chromosomes of all these different things,
Uh-huh.
but how about you say reality is you are what you are, and you cannot always change. You can change the perception of what you are, but you can't change the core of what you are.
See, that's big
I'm just throwing
issue.
out ideas to debate. You know what I mean? Because it's like there's and I'm not saying that's bad.
Mhm.
I'm not. I'm just saying that okay. Because now remember, this comes from a guy that grew up in the Bay Area during the '80s, which was the big outbreak of this is when these rights become more predominant, and people were just fighting for the right to proclaim, you know, I'm
Mhm.
of this gender or I'm of this lifestyle. So, and several of my friends have become unalive due to AIDS of that
Yeah.
lifestyle, and they were my dearest friends. You know how like you'll have maybe 5 or 6 true friends in your life. Well, I've
Mhm.
lost a couple of them over this particular issue. So don't get me as if I'm speaking ill. I'm just trying to throw out ideology and ideas.
Mhm.
It's one thing, your perception of how it makes you feel comfortable to enjoy this world,
Mhm.
and that of the scientific fact of what chromosomes you're carrying deep within
Yeah,
your genes.
yeah.
You
See,
know,
that's a very interesting question, and I think this point of view that okay, you have this biology, therefore you should have this marker. It's something very big. You know, in some cases, in more narrow, maybe more kind of scientific or research terms, they even differentiate between biological sex and gender. So male and female, those are biological sexes, yeah. And yes, you are born with certain organs, yeah.
Mm.
That's what you have. Even on that level, we still have some diversity. It's not very common, but we have something which is called intersex. Sometimes
Mm.
children are born with what they call ambiguous sex organs.
Yes, yes, that's what I'm talking about. Like the lady boys in Asian that are quite proud of themselves, and yeah, I think
Ladyboys,
is
it
that
can be just their societal role. You know, some of them may be gay men, they are biologically
okay?
male, they just take on that role. Or a
Yeah,
ladyboy can be an intersexual person, you know?
yeah, yeah.
And sometimes
But
it's not even visible. Sometimes the person can be externally male, but internally he can have some ovaries, like female reproductive organs. So, there is at least one such case, and I think it's more than one. But you know, when I was researching the topic, I found this case, and his internal, you know, organs, female organs, were discovered when he was, oh, what is it called when you are becoming unalive, and the
yeah,
doctors open you up, and you know
yeah,
what
yeah. Autopsy,
autopsy? Yeah,
autopsy.
yeah, autopsy.
Good.
So we have biological sexes and we have genders, and seems well today it seems that people who are more what we can call conservative, they are like, okay, if you have your biology, then your gender needs to come from your biology, yeah. And the other side is like, no, that's questionable. To be honest, for me, it's questionable as well. See, I am biologically male. I have no
Right.
problem with my biological body. That's fine. I don't want to change it. But in terms of gender, I call myself apagender, which is indifferent towards gender. I
Right.
don't view myself neither as a woman nor as a man, you know?
Right.
Uh, just for myself. I don't
Right.
say
Right.
that
Right.
others shouldn't have gender. No, no, it's none of my business. I don't fight against gender as a concept, you know? But for myself, my ethnicity, my religion, my gender, I don't want to be defined by these. So
Right.
um, that's the
Well,
question of the day, you know? Should
for
you
me
be limited or should you have the freedom of choice, you know?
now, I must admit to my own ignorance and confusion because I
Uh,
often see the line between sex or the definition of sex and the definition of gender
uh-huh,
moving back and forth depending on what side you're
uh-huh.
talking to.
Yeah.
You know, um, Mitchell or Michael, I mean, pardon me, Michael,
Mm-hmm.
asked the question. Perhaps you can comment on
Uh-huh.
it. And
To what gender you would stick to? The hermaphrodite? Would you give us your own opinion on that? So, see the term hermaphrodite. Nowadays, it is more used for the animal world. Um, when we speak of animals like snails, worms, and other animals, they are hermaphrodite. And sometimes the single individual, in terms of animals, can get pregnant, or like two snails make love and both get pregnant because they are hermaphrodites. Yeah. So in terms of human, we use the term intersex in case of human beings, but you're born intersex. So when we speak of intersexuality, again, it's your biological body. Okay, you were born like that. So what gender you would stick to? Yeah, would you give us your own opinion on that? So people are born like that, and I think they have the right. And for a long time, doctors were cutting off parts of their genitalia. You know, kids would be born as intersex, and doctors would cut off some parts of their, reproductive organs, and they described it as something very painful. And it would be done to make people conform to the binary system of genders. Yes, you should be.
Society's right and wrongs.
Yeah, rights and wrongs.
Cultural norms. You have to be this. It's not
Yeah,
culturally acceptable at this time to
yeah,
be you. We're going to make you into what we think should be right or wrong.
yes, yes, yes. And it was very traumatic for those people,
Which is
Uh,
completely understandable. I mean,
yeah, yeah. Michael and Lee, again, thank you so much for the likes and hearts.
I'm just trying to run you up as, like I
Thank
said,
you. Yeah,
the
thanks a
more
lot.
people the more people that we can, the more people that talk intellectually like this,
Yeah.
the better the world is, man. And that's
Exactly.
what-
This is why I'm doing it. It's just a lot of political debates and stuff on TikTok is just, as you said, it's just the loop. Yeah. And
Yeah.
nothing changes. So we need to educate ourselves and have discussions, even the quality of the discussions, the energy. It should be like more relaxed, more productive, instead of just
Less
yelling.
judgmental.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because I'm sure that there's a lot of point of views that I bring up that you don't agree with, and
It's okay.
and it's
It's
not,
fine.
and that should be okay. Just like there's
Yeah,
point of views you may bring up that I don't agree with, and that should be
yeah.
okay.
Exactly,
It,
of
it,
course.
at the end of the day, we all live one life,
Yeah,
and the best we can do is find whatever joy we can within the boundaries of that life.
yeah,
So, because when it's done, whether you go on to something else or you don't, when it's done, it's done.
exactly.
Enjoy it while you're here.
See, Michael says, thank you, Mr. Lee, for your presence and knowledge. And yeah, I agree with him, and I would like to thank you, Lee, as well. Your stories are also interesting. That story of your father, yes, his interesting ability.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't want
that's
to, yeah, I don't want to just laugh at it or say, oh, it was just, unscientific. That would be too superficial, and that would
yeah,
be,
no, because they're literally there's. I mean, I thought about, and there's things that I've seen in my world that are equally that. Now I try to like I say, I try to how do you say dissect, and there's another word I'm trying to think of that I go over all this stuff, and I try to contemplate it within the boundaries of, like you said, within reason.
yeah,
But some of these things, there is just no explanation within the physical bounds of the world at that time, such as what happened with my father. That was 75 miles away. There's
wow,
no way he could have known that incident to have happened. Now, nowadays, you could say, well, he could have just, got a text or whatever. But back then, that wasn't a reality, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
So when you run into things that cannot be defined by reality, it makes you ponder if there is more to reality than we perceive. And I can't say what that is, but it just makes me open to the idea that there very well may be things that we don't simply understand.
yeah. Actually, I had a very interesting thing, an experience. So I was around, I think, between 13 to 15 years old, and I had this private teacher. I would take drawing lessons, and once I saw a dream. In my dream, my mom and my teacher were just having a conversation, and my teacher told my mom, "I think this is enough for Sevak." That's my name, yes. So the
Hmm.
teacher told my mom that Sevak is learned enough with me. I think that's enough. So after the dream, it was either the same day or 1 or 2 days later when we had the next scheduled lesson, the class. I went to his place, private lessons. I would go to his place and I knock on the door. His wife opens the door and I say, "Hi, I came for the lesson." And she just says, "Your teacher passed away." And, I don't know how to explain that dream. Uh,
Yeah. So now, see, somebody can just label it as coincidental, But
Yeah,
how coincidental can you get before you start thinking, it can't be that coincidental. You know what I mean?
yeah. Also,
And
when you say coincidental, you're just kind of trying to explain away,
yeah, justify it away.
Yeah,
Here's a justification of something that I don't know the answer to.
yeah. You just try to avoid getting into it. Yeah,
Psychoanalyzing, yeah. I don't want to psychoanalyze it. I just want to dismiss it.
yeah,
So
yeah,
here, let me
yeah, yeah.
let's,
So
see if I
yeah,
can get to over 3,000. Hey, one more. You almost at 4,000 here, buddy.
yes. Thank you. High five to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes, most of it is from you, Lee. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, Michael.
Okay.
He says thank you as well, Sebak. Yeah. Thank you as well for being here.
Thank you,
Comment.
Michael. I wish you join the conversation, Michael.
Yeah. You can join and talk.
I
Can I?
mean, I'm an idiot, so how you,
Let me see if I
I'm
can.
like Forrest Gump.
Oh no, you don't see it. I don't see the button. But Michael, you can send me a request if you'd like to. I will be happy to bring you. Okay. Oh, okay. I think there is a red dot. My screen is a little. Everything is cramped because I have, this vision problem. I think someone is sending a request, but I cannot accept it. Such a shame.
I'll tell you. Okay, I'm going to step down here. Here, drop me so I don't lose my 101, and then I'll look for a way to request.
Okay,
Okay.
but that's the
I'll
thing.
stay in the chat. I'm not going anywhere. I'll stay in the chat, and when he gets tired, you can bring me back in. But let him talk for a while, because
It's
that's
not
what
about you, Lee. Yeah, I'm just clicking right now on my interface. 2 or 3 buttons are kind of cramped together.
Right.
Click on one, but the other button comes up. Unfortunately, yeah, I don't know what to do with it. If you go away now, I won't be able to, also take you. I think I need to make my screen smaller. Okay, here's the thing. I'll make a little pause right now. Stay tuned, okay? Don't leave the live.
I'm not leaving. Okay.
Yeah, just give me 30 seconds. I'll just decrease the size of my text on my phone.
Okay.
That might help,
We
okay?
got 30 seconds. We're counting. Ding,
Okay, see you soon. I'm just pausing the live.
Ding, 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 ding. Ding, 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 ding. Ding,
Pause
ding,
live. Does it
ding,
work?
ding,
Okay.
ding, 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 ding. I just want to keep my 101 little points so I can get somebody else roses that deserve it. Thank you, Michael, for everything. I told him he can drop me so you can chat for a while. I just sit in the comments and listen as well. That might be best because I got to get some, father of children. I have things to do as well. It's just not too often you can get conversations without anger. So it's kind of nice to have it once in a while. Sorry, I muted because my dogs are out there barking. I didn't want to be impolite.
Okay, I was live. I am back, but yes, Lee, you're not here, right? So, guys, if you want to come up, you can send me requests. Guest +1. Okay, now Lee, your request, Lee. Here you are.
See?
Okay.
Now, can you request more than one? Can Michael?
Yeah. So, Michael, send me a request. Now I can accept you. I changed the thing. And now Michael needs to request that.
What I did is I tapped the little guest icon at the bottom, I think, which brought up the screen for
Yeah, do you know
request
how
in
to do
case he's
that,
trying to.
Michael? Mhm. There's this icon with two little humans. Yeah.
Yeah, guest.
Uh-huh. So yeah, that was a technical issue. I just saw that someone was requesting, but I wasn't able to. But now I'm able to. So, but yeah, wow, 4,700 likes. Thank you so
I'm trying
much.
to get you over 5,000, buddy. Little milestones
That's
there when I'm
good.
bored. The
Thank you.
screen's off.
Thank you so much.
Michael helped out a lot too, so we've been working that for you.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Okay, Michael says that's fine. I'm
We were
following
talking about.
you back also.
Yeah, I told him I muted my
Mhm.
microphone because my dogs are barking. He said that's fine.
Okay. It's okay.
We were having a little conversation while you were doing what you were doing.
Mhm. So maybe that's enough for today. Yeah, we had a very interesting conversation. And you have
Okay.
stuff to do, right, Lee? You told
Yeah, I
me.
have children to deal with. It dropped me because it's something I found out when people gift you or like that little check thing that says 101. If I leave, I lose all that. If you drop me, that gets a credit in my account so that when I come back, I
Uh-huh.
can give those roses back to you.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
I
That's
don't know
that's what.
anything about
Yeah,
that.
no, that's yeah. I do enough live chats to know that that's the way. That's why you always request, please drop me. You don't just leave. You say, please
Okay.
drop me, and they'll drop you, and then you hang on to those. And the more you pass those back and forth, then each party gets I don't know, bonuses and stuff like that. That
Okay.
raises their up in their gift level or whatever. It's
Okay.
advantageous to both parties to
Oh, okay.
give and take.
So I,
So drop me, my friend. I thank you for the conversation. Please invite me anytime, and
yep.
make sure that yeah, I'd be happy to discuss whatever
Mhm,
topic and
mhm.
put my 2 cents in and hope it's worthy of your
Yeah.
time.
Thank you so much. So I'm disconnecting you now, Lee. All right. Thank you. Take care. See you
Good
next time.
evening. See you next time. Y'all come back now.
Okay. So that was Lee. And yeah, the discussion for today. Actually, I went back and my background changed. Can I add as an effect? Let me see. Oh, yes. Maybe I could do that. Uh-huh. Yeah, it's back. Okay, so these are the topics. So we had a very interesting conversation with Lee. And next time, I think we'll talk about ethics, the sense of good and wrong, what's acceptable, what's not, and how these questions, reality and learning about reality affect your sense of ethics, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable in life. So next time we'll talk about that. Thank you guys. For Michael, thank you so much for the gift and for all the hearts, and Lee again. So huge, a huge heart to you guys. Okay, and see you next time. Bye bye.